Good afternoon. My name is Allan O'Keefe. I'm representing myself and my family. I'm a member of the Central Australian Frack Free Alliance, but I'm not speaking on behalf of them. I'm speaking on behalf of myself.
Thank you. And the other people at the table, please.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Marilyn O'Keefe. I'm basically here as a support person. This is my husband on my left and my granddaughter on my right.
Thank you. I'll just get your granddaughter to say her name, please.
Hello, my name is Jasmin and I'm representing myself.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Hello, my name is Jasmin and I'm representing myself.
Thank you very much. Yes, please.
Hello and good afternoon to everyone here, including those who are watching online. Thank you for taking some time out of your day to listen to what I have to say. 3 weeks ago, my grandfather approached me and asked if I could speak today to voice my own concerns about hydraulic fracking. I first became aware about hydraulic fracking 2 years ago, when my grandparents viewed the documentary Frackman, and to be honest, in the beginning I was unconcerned about fracking as I did not think that it would affect me, the environment or future generations. I want to start by saying that Alice Springs is located in the desert near the centre of Australia, and it is a town that relies heavily on tourism. We have just come through our hottest July on record, which means that the people, the animals and the plants need more access to fresh water. All of our water comes from the Amadeus Basin. This is clean, pure drinking water that is located underground and is not renewable. According to the Australian Government Department of Environment and Natural Resources, the water is not replenishing at a rate that is sustainable for the near future. The Amadeus Basin not only supplies water to Alice Springs, but also to the surrounding stations and Indigenous communities. The Australian national average of water that one person uses per day is 90 litres. The average water usage for the 27,000 people that live in this town equates to 2.5 million litres per day. This does not include the surrounding stations or communities. When I found out that it takes 1 to 2 million litres of water to drill a well, and that said well could be fracked up to 20 times with the usage of roughly 14 million litres of water, I was upset. I was disappointed that these mining companies could waste an entire town's days worth of water to drill only one well. A main concern of mine is that our water will no longer be safe for consumption once the hydraulic fracking takes place, as none of these companies can guarantee nor confirm that the bore water that we rely so heavily on for life will not be contaminated. The mining companies that practice fracking have no obligations to disclose what chemicals they use. The National Toxics Network have stated that only 2 out of the 25 most commonly used chemicals in Australian hydraulic fracking have been tested by the National Industrials Chemicals Notifications and Assessment Scheme, and that by allowing these chemicals to go unchecked permits these mining companies to pollute our environment with the possibility of irreversible damage. I question all mining giants. What plans and provisions have they in place to correct any damages to our water supply and to our environment? I challenge any of these mining corporations to drink the same water once these chemicals have been mixed with our once pure drinking water. Yesterday, I spoke to a former miner from the company Pasnico. He wished to remain anonymous, and I quote him directly. Most mining companies can afford fines. Most fines only equate to a couple of minutes of production time a day. When mining companies assess their financial risk, they equate into their profits to receive a certain number of fines regardless whether that money is used or not. I ask everyone who is listening, if these companies already put money aside for any fines that they may or may not receive, then why are they not held accountable for their actions and made to clean up after themselves? I call upon the Indigenous leaders of this land to voice their opinions and concerns as they are drinking the same water as you and I. As I address the people in this room and those who are viewing online, who would come to our town if you couldn't drink the water? Would you stop if you were uncertain about the contamination? As a young person and a local resident of the Northern Territory, I call upon our Chief Minister Michael Gunner to drink a glass of water sourced near a fracking well if he believes that it is safe. My children's children will not be using the gas out of any of your mines, but my children's children will be drinking the water out of this ground. I ask you, Michael Gunner, to please ban fracking. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to speak to the panel on my concerns in relation to hydraulic fracking. My name is Allan O'Keefe and I am a long-term resident of Alice Springs, also a business owner involved in the building and tourism industries. Both these industries are family-owned and operated. I came to the Territory in 1980 with my wife, who is with me today, and 2 children. We have a total of 5 children and 16 grandchildren, all of which I represent here today. At this stage, I would like to point out that all of my family are totally opposed to hydraulic fracking. 27 years ago, like most tourists, we had planned to stay for around 3 to 6 months, depending on the availability of employment. Shortly after arriving, I was involved in some building works of the Desert Rose Inn in Alice. During the construction of this project, I became interested in the tourism industry and consequently purchased an accommodation house. After a short time, we decided to expand the premises to a 29-room motel, of which I am still a director of. My major concern is that if the Northern Territory government allows fracking gas fields across the Territory, it would have a disastrous effect on the tourist industry. The Northern Territory contains so many unique landscapes from Uluru in the south to Kakadu in the north, and it makes no sense to put these natural sites at risk. Our well-established tourist industry employs 6,284, with the majority of local residents. Tourism is the 6th biggest employer in the Northern Territory, which in turn helps to keep the community stable and prosperous. As a comparison, the mining industry employs only 3,299 people, ranking it at 11th place. We assume that the majority of the employees are fly-in, fly-out. This information comes from the 2011 census researched by the Australian Institute. There are also a large number of Indigenous-owned organisations that provide employment for Indigenous and non-Indigenous persons. Tourism is continually expanding, with more visitors increasing year by year, and these are figures we've established from our own property. Claims that gas royalty are the Territory's only hope to bring the independence from Canberra are misguided, and again this is research from the Australian Institute. Total mining gas royalties contribute just 3% of the Northern Territory government revenue. Even doubling the size of this industry would not significantly change the nature of the Northern Territory budget. If unconventional gas in the NT was successful as it is in Queensland, the government revenue would only expand by 1%. Gas industry claims of major economic benefits for the Northern Territory from unconventional gas development should be treated with scepticism. Unconventional gas and increased exports have caused policy chaos in the rest of Australia, with poor results for consumers, taxpayers, shareholders, and most importantly, the environment. Gas development rarely brings major revenue streams to government, large employment numbers, or positive benefits to the community or their industries or other industries. The next point of concern is the health and well-being of all citizens. A recent summary of health risks of unconventional gas development, which requires hydraulic fracking, has been published in Environmental Science and Technology. This is a very rapid evolving area, and the recent publication identified 685 papers established between 2009 and 2015 in peer-reviewed scientific journals that are relevant to assessing impacts of hydraulic fracking. Of the papers, 84% contain findings that indicate public health hazards, elevated risks and adverse health outcomes. 69% of water studies showed actual potential of water contamination, and 87% air quality studies indicate elevated air pollution. My question to the panel and our Chief Minister, Mr Gunner, is why you would risk damaging tourism when a well-managed tourism industry could continue indefinitely? The second question is, how do you sell your hydraulic fracking to the tourist industry? For the benefit of the panel and the Chief Minister, who may have forgotten what natural beauty there is here, I will quote from the Planet website referring to Northern Territory, and it goes on to say, "A land of stark beauty, sacred Aboriginal sites and space, the Northern Territory has always stood apart from the rest of Australia. Vast deserts, wetlands, monsoonal rains, red rock gorges and raging rivers spark the spirit of the adventurer in all those who visit, and these are natural features enabling the local Aboriginal people to preserve their traditional way of life. Today, travellers flock here from around the world to see these spectacular sites and learn more about the fascinating culture of tribes that have thrived in this rugged land for thousands of years. The Red Centre and its land of parched desert gorges and striking rock formations, Uluru, its iconic red monolith, is one of the region's most famous features. The top end encompasses the World Heritage listed Kakadu National Park, beautiful Litchfield National Park, Catherine Gorge and the Aboriginal settlements of Arnhem Land. Also at the top end lies multiculturalism, Darwin and the capital of Northern Territory. In closing, I sincerely hope the panel and the NT government consider the viewpoint of our community. I am one voice and I represent many. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all. Thank you.
Oh, right. Thank you. Sorry. No. Right, thank you. I think you appear to have relied on a number of references that you've obviously got your hands on. In your presentation, there seem to be a number of references to some scientific papers and other articles. We would be very much appreciative if you could give those references to the task force in due course.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. After at another time, you say, or
whenever you're ready. If you see any one of the people at the table just behind you there, either today or they can give you details, you can send them in. We'd very much appreciate those getting hold of those papers.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the O'Keeffes? Yes, Dr. Anderson.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. O'Keefe. And I just want to ask a question about the tourism. And the interim report well recognises the iconic outback landscapes of the NT and their importance for the tourism industry. But I just wanted to put the scenario to you, all of you actually, see what you think. What if there were a proposal to develop the shale gas industry in an area that doesn't have tourists, that is not in a national park or anywhere near national park, and has the support of local communities, including local Aboriginal communities? What would you...
Well, my view is I totally opposed to fracking in any form, anywhere within the Northern Territory.
And that's the viewpoint of all of us.
Thank you.
Yes, Professor Priestley.
The panel has been looking at and contrasting the impact of the industry in Queensland, which is different in some ways but has similarities in others, to try and gain some insight as to the experience from the development of the industry in Queensland. In relation to tourism, are you aware of any evidence of an impact on tourism in Queensland as a result of the development of that industry?
No, I tried to get some information on that prior to coming here, but the information we had that it wasn't close to the areas where the fracking has taken place wasn't close to any sort of tourist icons like it is in Central Australia. And from that list I read, you'll realise there's probably 6 icons here in Central Australia which would be all affected. So my short answer to that is no, I can't. I haven't any other info on tourism.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yes, Professor Hart.
Could I just test, you made the statement, excuse me, earlier on that shale gas, hydraulic fracking would have a disastrous impact on the tourism industry. And I appreciate your feeling, your deep-held feeling. But all of the icons you mentioned, Kakadu and the like, and certainly Uluru, were all areas that are very unlikely to experience hydraulic fracking. Certainly up in the top end, there's very little gas. Yeah, you've read the interim report, and we've focused initially anyway on the Beetaloo. So would you be prepared, it's almost a similar question to my colleague here, that you're talking about tourism industry outside of the area that's if indeed the moratorium's lifted, the area that would be most likely to be developed. So do you still hold the same view? I mean, you still hold the same view you don't want fracking.
Yes, exactly.
But I'm just trying to tease out, you said a disastrous effect on tourism. And I guess I'm seeking to get some evidence on that.
Well, I'm saying that with the disastrous effect, to get to Beetaloo, which is where you're referring to,
Sure.
they'll have to either go through Darwin or through Alice Springs.
Sure.
And there's going to be some impact on those places.
Okay, so this is transport and things like that.
Exactly.
Okay. Yep.
And it's sort of a bit like owning a house in an area close by where the area is disastrous.
Yeah. Okay.
In my speech, I spoke mostly about the water supply. I believe that if there was a fracture in a well and it did contaminate the water, as I said, as a tourist, would you stop in this town if you were uncertain if you could drink our water?
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation.